Hello and welcome to News Central TV. I am Chiwete Onyema. The top stories this hour. President Tinubu conferred with highest national honor in St. Lucia on his diplomatic trip to the Caribbean island nation. Nigerian University Senior Staff Union threatens fresh industrial action over withheld salaries. France returns military base to Senegal as part of broader withdrawal. Details shortly. We begin in St. Lucia, where President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has been awarded the highest national honor of the title of Knight Commander of the Order of St. Lucia. The honor was announced during his diplomatic visit to the Caribbean nation, part of a broader two-country tour. Addressing St. Lucia's Parliament, President Tinubu emphasized the shared destiny of Africans and the Caribbean people, calling for deeper economic and cultural ties.
We are also proud to note that some of our famous nationals contributed to the development of your country in the early years of transition from colonial rule to independent sovereign power.
I came here as a president, ordinary president. Leave other honors behind. But I'm living as a knight.
And honored that he has agreed to accept the highest order that can be bestowed on an individual by the government and people of St. Lucia. It is a fitting testimony of our appreciation for not only His Excellency, appreciation for the links that bind the people of St. Lucia and the people of the OECS with the people of Nigeria.
Meanwhile, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has announced that a scholarship program for students from the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, OECS, to study in Nigerian universities will commence in the next academic year. At a joint press conference with the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Philippe J. Pierre, following a high-level working luncheon with OECS leaders in Gros Islet on Monday, President Tinubu says the initiative has already commenced. News Central's correspondent Bettina Nweli reports.
President Bola Tinubu on Monday in St. Lucia announced a scholarship program for students from the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, OECS, to study in Nigerian universities. The president, who is on a state visit to the Caribbean island nation, said the initiative is part of a broader cooperation framework to strengthen people-to-people ties and expand opportunities in education, trade, and development.
I strongly advocate for educational exchange programs between Nigeria and OECS. I will establish full scholarship tuition for students of OECS.
President Tinubu further disclosed that a proposal for visa waivers for holders of diplomatic and official passports from OECS member states is also on course.
In a concrete step towards this goal, Nigeria is open to exploring a visa waiver arrangement for holders of diplomatic and official passports from OECS member states traveling to Nigeria. I respectfully urge a reciprocal gesture to enable smoother movement of officials and foster closer institutional cooperation.
I think from what the President said, and from the historical ties we've had before, people-to-people relationship, Lucians playing some important role in our country, I think this will mark a new beginning, something that will resonate in the future.
The relationship with Nigeria and St. Lucia and also the East African Caribbean states is vital. It's vital for our access into the Caribbean regarding trade, cultural, and even our access, even with the United Nations.
Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Philip Perry, welcomed the scholarship initiative, describing it as a timely and practical expression of solidarity.
We held a high-level luncheon where the president outlined to us how the OECS would benefit from the country of Nigeria. We expect the scholarships to happen in the next academic year. We expect students to be studying in Nigeria in the next academic year, based on the fact that the president has instructed that that should happen, and the committee will deal with it. So in the next year, we expect the scholarships to begin.
There are many areas that both nations can explore collaboration in tourism, trade, education, and multilateral diplomacy. As such, President Tinubu's visit is seen as advancing a Pan-African vision by fostering collaborative development. In Abuja, for News Central, Bettina Nwili.
Join us now in the news to discuss more on this is an education consultant and policy analyst. Professor Yomi Fawemi joins us right now. Professor, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. Good evening, everyone, and good morning.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let's start off by talking about President Tinubu's tour to the Eastern Caribbean. It has been seen as a strategic move to strengthen ties with St. Lucia and potentially other nations in the region. But can you discuss the potential economic, cultural, and let's even say the diplomatic outcomes of this visit? And also, of course, we cannot but talk about the honor bestowed on our dear president.
Well, I mean, thanks. That's quite a lot of questions. There's quite a lot of conversations in social media about the visit. For many people, they're wondering why St. Lucia. For some other people, they are asking questions, why now? So there are two key issues people have tried to raise. One is why St. Lucia, and then secondly, why now? And the government has come with various releases. I personally ask myself that same question: why now and for? My own questions around why now and why this long. I mean, the president will be out of the country for upwards of 10 days or so in St. Lucia, and then we'll go for a conference that Nigeria is not a member of the BRICS, or we're going for a conference earlier than the members. Two of the members of BRICS that are supposed to hold the conference in Brazil have said they are not going because they have more pressing issues. Nigeria is invited because of his status. Nigeria is not a member, but our president will be devoting excess of 10 days to St. Lucia and to Brazil for a conference that we are not members. Now, for me, I wonder why that long. I also wonder what is the uniqueness of St. Lucia. I personally got to know about St. Lucia a couple of years back, where I had to do a class with a principal of a college there. And it's a relatively small country, less than 250,000 people. Some people have said 200,000. Now, it's not impossible that the goal of the president is some soft power. We have seen how the Technical Aid Corps, for example, has been a source of soft power in various parts of Africa. So maybe the goal is to have that soft power in the Caribbean, starting with St. Lucia. But let's also think about it. If we really want to, I personally feel that announcement was just a feel-good gesture announcement. For one, is that the St. Lucians asked for a scholarship scheme from Nigeria. No, we did not hear that from their speech. It was the president that made the request. So for me, I think it's an economic thing. 200,000 people. And remember, St. Lucia has, I think, 4 universities. Some records show 3, some records show 4. So they are not, they have enough. When you think about 200,000, you're talking about a population less than Ekpe or less than a part of Ikeja, and there are 3-4 universities. So universities is not their problem. So maybe the president just wonders, what can I announce that will make St. Lucians happy and respect me for that and applaud me for that. But I don't know which St. Lucian will be coming to Nigeria because of this scholarship. I also wonder the contradiction. The president announcing that, I was wondering, what is he really talking about? Because if you check our educational sector, in April this year, the federal government of Nigeria announced the cancellation of the bilateral scholarship programs that many Nigerians are benefited from. just in April, April, May, they suspended it, then they announced it. They are ending all bilateral educational agreement that leads to scholarship. And then in June, the president talks about a scholarship in another country, and you're wondering, so why did you cancel the bilateral educational assistance as a scholarship, and then you want to start another scholarship for St. Lucia? It looks like that's a big contradiction from the point of view of foreign aid through scholarship. And like I've seen sometimes in the educational sector or in this recent past, there seems to be a lot of too many activities, some little bit of lack of coordination and significant rigorous analysis that makes there. If the president wants to do a scholarship with St. Lucia, it's just ridiculous. You cancel the scholarship program a couple of months, but then you want to start with St. Lucia. I mean, what are you really doing? And maybe more contradictory is the fact that, so which university are they coming to? Just a couple of days back, or today or yesterday, the ASU gave a warning that they could go on strike. Is that where you're giving scholarship to? And universities are cash grab. And perhaps maybe the most annoying of the contradiction, if I'll talk about the three contradictions I see in the announcement, is that public primary schools in Federal Capital Territory have been on strike for over 3 months. That's where the president lives. That's where the Minister for Education lives. That's where the Minister of Health lives. That's where the Chief Justice of Nigeria lives. That's where the Senate President, the House of Reps Speaker live. They have been on strike for almost a month over money. You didn't solve the problem in Abuja. You're going to announce scholarship for St. Lucia's resident. It looks pretty ridiculous. And what's all of this about?
Well, so tell me now, of course, the Nigerian government has announced a scholarship program for students in that region to study in Nigerian universities with effect from next academic year. What do you think can be done to even accommodate that? Because now the president has said it. I want to believe that the country, St. Lucia, would want to hold our president to his word. So what can we do between now and next year, if at all it's possible, to at least fix up our education? Maybe this might just give us a more reason to focus on education in Nigeria.
I mean, great question. But the question is that who is that St. Lucia that wants to come to Nigeria? You saw yesterday or 2 days back a Nigerian student who is studying medicine in St. Lucia. Nigerian students, at least I know about 2 parents who have sent their children to St. Lucia to study medicine, because when you go to study medicine in St. Lucia, you can easily practice in America. And so it's rather, if you practice in some countries, you can, so if you study to become a doctor in some countries, you can easily get employed in the US. But if you go to St. Lucia and some countries in the Caribbean, you actually, I know parents who send their children from Canada, from USA to go to St. Lucia and those Caribbean countries because it's cheaper. So Americans send their people to St. Lucia. Canadians send their children to St. Lucia to go study medicine so that they can target the American market. So my question is that, so is there a St. Lucian that will now come to Nigeria to come to study medicine when Americans are coming to St. Lucia to study medicine? So the question is, it's not a question of just announcing the scholarship. The question is, at the St. Lucia, did they request for it? Now, I understand if they were trying to do something that is around culture, because we have, for example, very rich cultural exchange program between Nigeria universities and French organizations. So there is a French Research Institute, for example, University of Ibadan, called IFRA, wherein they bring exchange program who come to learn Yoruba culture, dance, in the University of Ibadan. Now, if that is the kind of thing they want to do, yes, it makes sense because we're best to learn Yoruba than here. But the question you ask yourself is that who is a St. Lucia who is coming to come to Nigeria to learn to be a doctor, to be an engineer, or to become a lawyer? Who has applied? We have data in Nigeria that shows countries that people write JAM, people write JAM examination. We have people applying from St. Lucia. So maybe the president is selling a product that has no buyer. Maybe it's flying a kite that nobody is concerned about. But hey, it will be on record. He made the announcement. But if the St. Lucians don't want to come, they won't come. So nobody will leave St. Lucia to come to Nigeria because of the fact that there's a scholarship. You're going to think about the safety of the country. You're going to think about the challenges you have living up. You're going to think about the quality of education. You're going to think about that. Unfortunately, all the universities in St. Lucia, none of them is ranked in the Times Higher Institution ranking. So we can't compare it to a University of Ibadan or OAU or ABU or UNICA. So we don't have the basis based on the THE ranking. But I don't see why anybody would leave the Caribbean to come and say, when Canadians go there to study, when Americans go there to study. So if people are going to there to study some of their courses, then those ones will not come here. That means they are competitive. Right now, but I agree if it's things around culture, around that. What will even shock some people is that it may actually be better for you to go and study some cultural issue about Nigeria outside Nigeria. One of our most respected authors was doing a research on something about the Igbo culture, and he said he found that she saw that there were more books in a university in UK than in Nigeria about the Igbo culture. So the question is that who is demanding the product the president is selling? Or like we ask Nigeria, who sent you job?
Okay, so let's move away from education now. And you mentioned culture. There's also perhaps maybe trade or even security. Do you think there's something Nigeria and St. Lucia can gain from this newfound friendship?
I mean, we can adduce reasons why what we can gain from this visit, but I did not think the president went there because we want to gain. Personally, my opinion is that the president knows why he went to St. Lucia. He knows. I also think that the rigor with which the presidency is releasing information on why the president is going there proves to me that they know the reason is not the reason. You know, people say there are two reasons why people do something. The reason why the reason they tell you and the real reason. I do not think the president went there because of all those things. I mean, I saw a press release where they were saying, oh, we have the historic ties. Most of the people in St. Lucia came from Nigeria, and then we had the Chief Justice from St. Lucia. So what has that got to do with going to visit St. Lucia in 2025? Some people have even argued that it's the headquarters of an organization Nigeria wants to have in place. So what has that got to do there? But it makes sense. It makes sense if the president has an objective that we don't know. It doesn't make sense when the president and his team try to now wrap it as if it's something about Nigeria. Today is Tuesday. The president has been on this trip for a couple of days. I don't know anybody that is aware of any agreement that has been signed. Now, I'm not saying agreement may not be signed by tomorrow, but I've not seen any agreement signed. I've not seen any commitment from any business person. What I have seen rather is the president addressing the parliament. I've also the president getting awards and president giving recognition to his Nigerian students who study medicine. I've not seen agreement. I've not seen the St. Lucia biggest factory say they come to. I've not seen any announcement of any investor from St. Lucia coming to say they are coming to start a factory in Nigeria. I have not even seen any significant announcement on the part of St. Lucia. I've seen Nigeria making a lot of announcements. Oh, there's scholarship, there is this, there is that. But I've not seen, oh, Nigeria is one, so we'll give them scholarship, we'll give their diplomats and some visa-free stuff. I've not seen so much announcement on the part of St. Lucia. So to me, it looks like a one-sided visit. And you ask yourself, what is Nigeria looking for? And that it is only St. Lucia that can provide it. I mean, but you could also argue when the Prime Minister of Germany comes to Nigeria in terms of the economy, we're smaller than Germany. When the US president comes there, you're smaller. Well, you know, because of the fact that we have something, you don't need to convince a German president where she comes to Nigeria. It's a huge market. There are many Nigerian businesses. There are many German businesses in Nigeria. You don't need to convince the American president to come to Nigeria. But what is the St. Lucia president looking to get from a visit from a Nigerian president? And what does a Nigerian president looking for? I don't see it.
All right, thank you so much, Professor Faremi, for being our guest, for having this conversation with us. I hope you join us some other time.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. The Senate on Tuesday confirmed 2 nominees for the Nigerian Law Reform Commission following the presentation of committee report, even as 1 nominee declined her appointment. It also debated and passed for second reading a bill seeking the establishment of a Federal University of Technology in Odupani, Cross River State. News Central's Segir Ibrahim reports.
Plenary began with the confirmation of appointments into the Nigerian Law Reform Commission, where 2 out of 3 nominees scaled the Senate's approval.
The committee, after the screening exercise, deliberated on the nominees' suitability for appointment as chairman and full-time commissioner of the Nigerian Law Reform Commission and hereby makes the following observations and findings. That the appointments of the nominees satisfy the requirements of Section 2, subsection 1 and 2 of the Nigerian Law Reform Commission Act 2022 and the Senate Standing Orders of 2023.
President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, praised the work of the Judiciary Committee and confirmed the appointment as recommended.
Will the Senate confirm the nomination of Professor Dakas C.J. Dakas, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, representing North Central, for appointment as Chairman of the Nigerian Law Reform Commission? Will the Senate confirm the nomination of Dr. Uchenna Eugene Okulucha, representing South-South, for appointment as Commissioner of the Nigerian Law Reform Commission? Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
Next up is the bill seeking to amend the Federal Universities of Technology Act to create a new institution in Odukpani, Cross River State.
This Federal University of Technology in Odukpani will not only bridge the educational gap in our region, but also serve as a vital incubator for innovation, particularly in emerging sectors like fintech, which is one of the fastest growing industries in Nigeria today.
Technology is the most veritable tool that can be deployed to leapfrog our economic development.
To provide for the establishment of the Federal University of Technology Odukpani in Cross River State and for other related matters, 2025.
The bill was then referred to the Committee on Tertiary Education for further legislative action. Meanwhile, the Senate also postponed the Northwest Zonal public hearing on the review of the 1999 Constitution, scheduled for July 5th in Kano State. President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, says the postponement is in honor of Alhaji Aminu Dantata, billionaire businessman and philanthropist who died on Sunday, June 30th.
The Senate resolved to observe 1 minute silence in honor of the late Alhaji Aminu Dantata, and also resolved to postpone the Zonal Constitutional Conference of the Northwest to a date to be mutually agreed between the stakeholders of the Northwest as soon as the Deputy Senate President is back from Saudi Arabia.
Akpabio explained that the public hearing will take place in the remaining 5 geopolitical zones in the capital cities of Borno, Plateau, Enugu, Akwa Ibom, and Lagos as their respective locations. In Abuja for News Central, Sakir Ibrahim.
Still on education matters, the Senior Staff Association of Nigerian Universities, SANU, is threatening the fresh industrial action over the federal government's failure to release 2 months' withheld salaries for members who joined the 2022 strike. At its 51st National Executive Council meeting in Kano, the union also condemned delays in salary payments to university staff and called for immediate harmonization of salary disbursements across all federal and state institutions. SANU expressed disappointment over the stalled renegotiation of the 2009 agreement with the government and criticized the unjust allocation of earned allowances, demanding redress. The union warned that continued neglect of agreements could trigger further action, urging the government to address these concerns to avert another crisis in the university system. We're going to a quick break. When we return, there's more. Many thanks for staying with us. Now, the House of Representatives has called on the federal government to act swiftly to avert possible sanctions over the non-remittance of Nigeria's financial contributions to the Secretariat of the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States. This alongside motions addressing bandit attacks, gully erosion, and consideration of multiple legislative proposals shaped deliberations at Tuesday's plenary. News Central's Idong Joseph brings details from the Green Chamber.
An announcement coming from Honorable Isa Mohammed Anka.
The week's plenary began with announcements and the presentation of petitions, including one from a coalition of civil society organizations seeking a probe into an alleged contract scam, and another from Okori Nnamdi on the non-implementation of a Supreme Court judgment.
Mr. Speaker, this is a coalition by civil service society organization
call for urgent investigation into alleged multi-billion contract scam, massive official corruption, diversion of public funds, contract splitting, and ceding of police barracks to cronies. Mr. Speaker, this letter is addressed to you, and the prayers are well engrafted here.
Through motions of urgent public importance, the House urged the federal government to take decisive action against rising cases of banditry in parts of Niger and Kwara states. Lawmakers also demanded immediate settlement of Nigeria's outstanding contribution to the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States to forestall international embarrassments.
House is aware that a tomorrow Patigi local government area share boundary of Kogi, Niger State, both which have had their bitter experience with armed banditry and kidnapping for ransom. House is also informed of the very recent introduction of banditry and kidnapping activities to Edu and Patigi local government area of Kwara State.
Also aware that according to available records, Nigeria's cumulative assessed contribution to the OACPS stands at 1,119,979 euros, 86 cents.
The day's legislative work continued with the consideration of 10 bills for the establishment of new educational and health institutions. 6 progressed to the third reading, while 4 skilled the third reading. The House also passed motions requesting INEC to create additional state constituencies in Ndokwa East, Ndokwa West, and Uwani in Delta states. A separate resolution addressed the urgent need for erosion control in Mashi, Dotsi Federal Constituency of Katsina State. Shortly after, the House resolved into the Committee of the Whole to adopt reports from its Committee on University Education and Health Institutions. In Abuja for News Central, I am Idong Joseph.
Now to security matters, the Lagos State Police Command has called on school proprietors across the state to promptly report any suspicious activity as part of its renewed efforts to safeguard educational institutions from emerging security threats. The State Commissioner of Police, Olondare Jimoh, said this at the unveiling of Schools Protection Squad in Ikeja. News Central's Victor Mbadike has more.
Schools and students have become soft targets for attacks by criminals across the country, leading to the closure of these schools, consequently denying them of learning. These growing threats have necessitated the urgent need for practical and proactive measures to protect the educational sector. In response, the Nigerian Police Force has introduced the Schools Protection Squad, a special initiative aimed at preventing attacks and enhancing the safety of students and educators. In Lagos, stakeholders gathered at a forum in Ikeja to discuss the initiative.
School insecurity is not only a breach of the right to education, it is a discrete threat to global peace and human capital development. It challenges the international commitment to Sustainable Development Goal 4 SDG, ensuring quality education, and Goal 16, promoting peace, justice, and strong institutions. I urge our schools, parents, and community leaders and communities to work in consonance with the security agencies as we champion the cause of security, safety, and well-being of our children.
These policies, programs...
According to Global Coalition to Protect Education from Attack, over 5,000 attacks were recorded on schools between 2020 and 2022, affecting more than 22,000 individuals and disrupted the right to education across 28 countries. The Lagos State Commissioner of Police, Olondare Jimoh, consequently emphasized on the need for vigilance and cooperation.
To the students and pupils here today, you are our heartbeat and the heartbeat of this initiative. Your education is our priorities and your safety is our obligations and mission. I encourage you to stay vigilant, report suspicious activities, and participate in safety programs in the schools and at home. Your voices matters, and we are here to protect you.
The IGP also announced that training programs will be rolled out for educators, school administrators, and security staff to equip them with the skills to recognize, report, and respond effectively to potential concerns. In Lagos for News Central TV, Victor Mbadike.
We now turn our attention to developments in Rivers State politics, where the recent reconciliation between FCT Minister Nyesom Wike and suspended Governor Siminalayi Fubara is being welcomed by many. For one women's group, it's the answer to months of fervent prayers. News Central's Biola Festus completes the report.
The declaration of emergency rule in Rivers State on 18 March had brought governance to a halt, triggering concerns among political stakeholders, civil society groups, and the public. But the announcement of a reconciliation deal between the suspended governor and the FCT minister has sparked fresh hope for political stability.
All agreed to work together with the governor, and the governor also agreed to work together with all of us. With the help of Mr. President and the agreement of the leaders of the states, including our leader, peace has returned.
The Rivers Women Unite for Sin, a vocal pro-Fubara group, says the Peace Pact is an answer to months of prayers. They've been at the forefront of calls for dialogue and the reinstatement of the suspended executive and legislative arms of government.
We thank our dear President, FCT Minister. We thank our dear Governor, Assembly members for agreeing to this peace.
Many residents had resigned themselves to the realities of emergency rule, but the persistence of these women is now being hailed as key factor to pushing political actors back to the negotiation table.
While we were, fighting and arguing about who was right and who was wrong, they took a detour, went on a different direction, because at the point where it was very difficult for people to even raise a voice, at the point where everyone was scared, at the point where people were taking sides, at the point where everybody went home, they stood firm. Look at what is happening today. The governor is out, made peace with the minister has made peace with the governor, and both of them are together again like the way they were in the beginning. This couldn't have been possible. Of course, people went to court, people demonstrated on the street and all of that, but it didn't bring about the needed solution.
They are now calling on President Bola Tinubu to lift the suspension and fully restore democratic institutions in the state.
As we praise God, we are looking forward to that glorious day when our government will be reinstated. I can assure you, the whole state is waiting for that day, and there will be so much joy in Rivers State, and progress and development will be restored to this state.
With both parties pledging to give peace a chance, all eyes are on the presidency to make the next move. In Rivers, for News Central, Biola Festus.
Coming up, UN warns of deepening crisis as Sudan displacements surge. We'll tell you more after the break. Join us again. Outside Nigeria, France has handed over to Senegal a military base used by its army as part of a broader withdrawal of French troops from the West African country. Senegal's President Bassirou Diomaye Faye announced late last year that former colonial power France would have to close its military bases in Senegal by 2025, a process that began in March with the first handovers to Senegalese authorities. The French embassy in Senegal, in a statement, confirmed on Tuesday that the country returned a military communications center located in Rufisque, near Dakar. For this conversation, I'm now joined by international affairs analyst Paul Ichime. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me too. Good evening.
All right, so Paul, tell us, do you see this withdrawal from Senegal as a total, of Christ's sake, is this of France in its, usual elements would still, have a way of superintending over the affairs of Senegal's military? What do you think about this?
So I think it's something that is a continuation of what you call the anti-French sentiment in West Africa, or former colonies in Africa, given the event of the coup from 2020, and from 2022, you remember the three countries that have pulled out of ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. And they were accusing ECOWAS of being teleguided, and but perhaps notably by France. And they are saying now they don't want to have anything to do with the colonial past. They have already expelled French troops from their countries, and Chad had also done that. Chad, which is in Central Africa, and Senegal and Cote d'Ivoire. In the ECOWAS, as members of ECOWAS, have also followed, are following that trend, that example, because I think France is not waiting to have these troops expelled, like facing the humiliation of from these three countries. So they are doing it, in a way that to save face, as it were. But it's also, like I said, the fact that the population in these countries are saying that their presence actually has not been in the interest of the African countries. Instead, it is France that has been benefiting. They use the bases to do surveillance, to train their own people, and then for a lot of other military benefits that do not actually add value to the citizens of the countries where they are based. In Senegal, I think about 350 are living by they started in April, May, and then with this one, I think the last batch will leave at the end of this month. And so the same thing with the ones in Cote d'Ivoire. It marks a new phase in the French relationship with these countries, and then some will say it means a reduction of the influence of France in this area, because along with the defense or military cooperation, other ties are also being severed or cut. And so France appears to be losing out. You notice that some of these countries, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, they tend to be moving towards Niger for their defense and military needs.
Now, you mentioned, you said this, of course, introduces a new phase of relationship between France and Senegal. But after this French withdrawal, what's next for Senegal?
Well, you're asking a very good question. But after more than 60 years of independence, do you really need foreign troops in your country? Can't you secure your place? What is the need of independence? You got independence from this country, and then they're still having their military bases in your territory. So it's as if giving you a goat and then holding on to the leash, to the rope. It means that what has happened is some will even go as far as saying that what France granted some of these colonies were political independence, that it really didn't follow up with economic and security or military independence. I think so. If it would be in the interest of these countries to begin to think, nationally, to begin to think that they are a sovereign nation, and they should act the same way. Of course, there might be filling the gap that these troops will leave is another thing. But I think it has always been to the benefit of the ruling class, the governments, not the people. So I think the earlier, this protection that is being given the leaders is dismantled. I think the better for governance and democracy in all these countries.
Should we be bothered, or let's say, can we talk about the narrative around the discomforts being felt by these colonies, which is prompting the French military to withdraw its troops from African countries where they had situated their base?
That it is what?
I'm saying that should we be bothered? Should we be bothered about the narrative around the discomforts being felt by the countries that of course are being colonized by that have been colonized by the French in the past, which is now prompting the French military to withdraw its troops from the African countries that they situated their base in?
Like I said, these countries have been independent for more than 60 years. So are they saying that they are not able to secure their territory? Is that why they have foreign troops there? It still shows that colonial and vestige, the umbilical cord, it means it's still there. So I think the earlier these African countries begin to think for themselves, become independent, both militarily, economically, and not just changing of their flags, when they were granted independence. So why should we be bothered? Yes, of course, because in terms of the fact that it means whatever role they were playing, the nations will now have to take on that role. And I don't know why they shouldn't. Otherwise, what is the essence of independence or sovereignty if you cannot secure your territory? So there might be some consequences, but I think it ought to have happened yesterday, even earlier than now. So if it means that African countries from where they are living will now be thinking independently and act independently and then secure themselves independent of these colonial masters, I think the earlier the better. Because in some cases, it hasn't really, there hasn't been much benefit. Just like their relationship. Do you know that these countries, when they got independence, their leaders were made to sign what they call a continuation of colonization treaty. That is where this military pact came about. It also, extends to economic issues. There are resources that are in these countries that France will be giving, the first preference. If the French companies cannot do it, that is when you begin to look for other nations, and so on and so forth. And of course, the most critical is that the money being used by these countries, there are about 14 of them in Africa. Some of them, the French CFA francs, is being, managed by the French Treasury. Even these three countries that have said they have severed relations are still using this currency. And for God's sake, whoever controls your economy or your money controls you. So I think if it leads to, dismantling of these vestiges of colonialism, all the better. But it also means that the countries will have to sit up and then manage their security, manage their finances, and manage their independence.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Paul, for having this conversation with us, and we hope you join us again some other time.
Thank you for having me.
Moving on, in East Africa, United Nations World Food Programme has warned that millions of people displaced by the war in Sudan are at risk of plunging even deeper into crisis as international food aid begins to run dry. Since fighting erupted in April 2023 between Sudan's military and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, the conflict has triggered the world's largest displacement crisis. More than 10 million people have been forced from their homes within Sudan, while an additional 4 million have fled across borders, many seeking refuge in Chad, Egypt, and South Sudan. Despite the scale of the crisis, the UN says its humanitarian response plan, which also addresses what it calls the world's largest hunger emergency, is just 14.4% funded. The World Food Programme is now warning that life-saving support for Sudanese refugees in countries like Egypt, Ethiopia, Libya, and the Central African Republic may soon grind to a halt.
People in front of our eyes, and I don't know, it's a big bad thing for us. I don't know about the others, but me, myself, I will never stand back there.
In Sudan is a regional humanitarian crisis. Over 4 million people have fled across borders to at least 7 countries in the region. WFP operations in all those countries are critically underfunded. Without further contributions, assistance for Sudanese refugees will completely cease in the coming months. Sudanese refugees deserve protection and assistance, not further hunger and despair. WFP will continue to serve them, but we need the funding to save lives.
The family of a street vendor, Boniface Nwangi Kariuki, has confirmed his death after he was shot by police during protest. His killing has reignited anger over police violence as Kenya faces fresh unrest. Kariuki was shot in the head while appearing to be a bystander during demonstrations over the death of a blogger, Albert Ojwang, in police custody. News that he was brain dead had sparked further public anger over alleged police brutality, with increasing demands for justice. Many Kenyans have also urged the government to settle the hospital bill after Kariuki's family had appealed for public donations. 2 police officers have appeared in court over his shooting, but have not yet been asked their pleas. They remain in custody pending the outcome of investigations. U.S. televangelist Jimmy Swaggart has died at the age of 90. Mr. Swaggart had gone into cardiac arrest at his home in Baton Rouge on 15th June. He was taken to hospital in critical condition. His family has said that Mr. Swaggart began broadcast sermons via radio in the 1960s and became a pioneer of televangelism, parlaying his success into a media empire until a sex scandal derailed it all. Mr. Swaggart was one of a handful of televangelists who rose to global prominence in the second half of the 20th century. Among them, Oral Roberts, Pat Robertson, Jim and Tammy Faye Baker, and Jerry Falwell. Media reports from Middle East say blasts were heard in Iran on Monday and Tuesday in Malahati and Tehran, and another explosion reported in the northwest. Meanwhile, Iran raised the official death toll for its war with Israel on Monday, with official media reporting 935 people were killed in the country during the 12-day conflict. The state-run IRNA news agency did not give a breakdown between military and civilian casualties. The country has also announced that the country nuclear negotiations with the United States will not resume until the U.S. military threat ceases. And that's all at this hour, but before we go, let's take another look at some of the major stories. President Tinubu has conferred with highest national honor in St. Lucia on his diplomatic trip to the Caribbean island nation. University Senior Staff Union has threatened fresh industrial action over withheld salaries. We also told you that France has returned the military base to Senegal as part of broader withdrawal. Remember, you may send your eyewitness reports to the WhatsApp number on the screen, and do follow us on our social media platforms. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, GoTV channel 23, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. My name is Chiwete Onyema.